It looked like it was going to rain the whole night, and it never did rain. And they got up to almost 90 minutes, and Steamboat comes back. He says, "Guys, you're the main event. Go on, put 25 minutes in."
Wow.
And we tore the house down that night in front of 30,000 people in Tennis Stadium in Durban, South Africa. And that's one of my, to this day, it's one of my most memorable things, because my biggest, I don't know, one of my biggest memories is the main event in South Africa. It was the Highlanders versus, at that time, it was Paul Burchell, who's an Englishman, and Dave Taylor. And Dave Taylor used to be tag team partners with William Regal, as everyone knows. And they actually cut our match that night. And me and Dave Taylor went out the night before in Cape Town, South Africa, and we got annihilatedly pissed until about, time to get the flight the next day. And we got to the building that night, and Ricky Steamboat comes up and he says, "Guys, we're going to have to cut your match tonight." And me and Dave Taylor are like, "Yeah, this is great," because we're hungover bad. But we asked, why are we getting cut? And he says, promoter didn't get rain insurance, and he's got to have a 90-minute show. Well, it looked like it was going to rain the whole night, and it never did rain. And they got up to almost 90 minutes, and Steamboat comes back. He says, "Guys, you're the main event. Go on, put 25 minutes in."
Wow.
And we tore the house down that night in front of 30,000 people in Tennis Stadium in Durban, South Africa. And that's one of my, to this day, it's one of my most memorable things, because by that time I was a much better worker and could actually just ad lib and go out and work. Not what they do today, where every punch, kick, and everything is choreographed. I still don't wrestle that way today. So.
Yeah, no, it's important to be able to be able to do both, so that way you can work with as many different opponents as you can. So I think, again, it falls back on what we started the interview with, of how sometimes people look at the old school and say, "Oh, that's not how we do things now." Well, it doesn't mean that it's not something that could still serve you well in the future when you find yourself in that kind of a situation where you got to ad lib 25 minutes in the main event.
I find here's the best, like going out on an indie show, I'm on the East Coast right now, living on the East Coast, and Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, they're so old school. They bring a lot of kids come to the shows, and you can't give them a spot fest. You just got to give them good versus evil, and it's such an easy formula. You go out and rock the house every night.
Yeah, no, definitely. Nothing beats good versus evil. That's what the business was built on. And you look at MMA, you look at combat sports in general, it's still the biggest seller.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's pretty cool. You got to do that main event in South Africa. I can't help but feel like maybe culturally the idea of Scotsmen against guys from England, there might be a bit of a thing culturally that the people might have rallied behind as well.
In Durban, Robbie. Thanks for having me.